What if your brain wasn't a barrier to podcasting, but what if it was your biggest creative advantage? Whether you've been diagnosed with ADHD, autism, or something else, this episode today is your permission slip to podcast your way. No filters, no shoulds, just a whole lot of encouragement. Let's get into it. Hello, my friend. Welcome to this week's episode of As It Relates to Podcasting. My name is Simona Costantini, and I'm the host of the show, and I'm also the founder of Volt Productions. In today's episode, we're going to meet my team, and we're having a roundtable discussion all about what it really looks like to podcast while neurodivergent. My team is made up of incredible women, and I can't wait to dive into this episode with you today. If you want to take this a step further, we can do so in my membership. The link to check it out and to join is in the episode notes below. It's $27 a month. We meet 4 times a month. It's kind of like mastermind style, to be honest. And we have so much fun. Some of the calls, I teach different things when it comes to podcast launch, growth, monetization, or strategy. And we also have calls where you can come in, mastermind, ask your questions, and grow your show. So if you're feeling called to check it out, you can do so in the episode notes below. And if you have questions about it, just send me an email. It's hello@voltproductions.co. Or just find me on Instagram and I can answer all of your questions as well. All right, let's get into today's conversation. Welcome back to this week's episode of As It Relates to Podcasting. Today, we have a really fun episode. I have my team with me here today. I'm going to get them to introduce themselves to you really quick. You know Emily, but Emily, do you want to do a quick hello, quick intro of what you do?
I'm Emily, and I am the lead editor for Volt Productions.
And I am Robin, and I'm helping business managing, and I don't do the editing, but I'd love to hear all about it.
Robin does all of like the OBM tasks, blogs, helping to streamline the social media, like all of the things. So you guys are way too modest when you introduce yourselves, by the way. Let me just add, okay? Anyways, Veronika, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Veronika. I'm a student intern actually for the summer for Volt Productions, so I'm here to help with any of you all with Robin, Emily, and Simona, but specifically right now I'm actually helping Robin a lot with the social media side and everything, and I'm so excited. I'm so excited to be here for this episode, but yeah, I'm loving it so far. You guys are amazing.
Oh, thank you so much. I love it. I'm like, does it have to just be summer? But I love it, the social media side, and also teaching you some like editing and hopefully bringing you into like in studio stuff. I hope, fingers crossed. So no, it'll be really cool. So thank you all for being here today. I'm so grateful. Now, this week's episode, we're going to be talking about different workflows and organization tips and tricks and all of the things when you have been diagnosed with something like ADHD, or if you have a little bit of neurospicy going on. And we wanted to bring the team together because we're seeing a lot of this happen over our different clients that we're working with, where people get, really stressed out or really overwhelmed with how much work they have to do, and, the idea of being consistent and how you have to show up every single week. And there's so much to unpack. So we thought it would be a really fun roundtable episode to talk about as a team with some of the things that we've seen going on with our clients, and Robin with her other clients as well. Emily has ADHD, so we can talk from that perspective. And I believe, Veronika, you said you did as well. So my first question for you today is, what are some misconceptions that you have seen for people who are neurodiverse in the podcasting space, whether it's a podcaster, creator, podcast manager?
I don't know if it, I'm going to put this under this category, but there's definitely a perception, I'll say, of people saying like, well, if you just come up with a schedule and you stick to it, like that helps with people who have ADHD or whatever. And while that can help with some, I think that what the real misconception is that something can be across the board helpful to everybody. Because growing up in school, I don't know how many times my advisors would give me planners and stuff like that to try to help me with my organization. And the fact of the matter is it did not help. It did not help. As much as I love planners and and I have one and stuff like that still, because I write stuff down, like dates coming up and stuff like that. As far as putting like maybe homework on it, or in the case of being an adult, since, you know, I've been out of school for a very long time, projects and stuff like that, I sometimes have to kind of like look at where they need to be done and kind of work back with the idea of like, okay, I need to have them done by this date. I would like to go ahead and get them done this date because I know I have the most amount of space. So it's not necessarily looking at the dates and being like due date, because things don't always take the same amount of time for me. So planners, stuff like that, are not a one size fits all like solution.
That's really interesting. That's really, really interesting because my boyfriend has ADHD and he was diagnosed as a kid and like had medication and all that. And when I first met him, he told me that he grew out of it, and I was like, I don't know about that. I was like, I don't know about that. But like watching him and like some of the things that he'll do, you know, if it's not in his, but him is like interesting. Him, it's his digital calendar. Like if it's not in the digital calendar structured in a specific time block in a specific time, then it doesn't get done. You know what I mean? Even if it's on a list or if it's on like a list a mile long, it just doesn't get done. So I find that really interesting because a digital calendar versus like an actual planner doesn't do anything for him. But having it in front of his face, seems to be more
digital
helpful.
planners. I hate them. I hate them so much. So that's why I have like
Really?
when I have a written calendar.
What about like a Google Calendar?
Nope, hate them. I have a written calendar for like upcoming dates and stuff because also for me, I can visualize that calendar way better because like when I'm visualizing like upcoming dates and stuff like that, I have like a picture of a calendar in my head. And I can see what dates I wrote, what color things on, because I color code like projects or certain things. So like I can see when they happen. And it looks like Veronica's nodding. I feel like she might identify with some of this or have an idea for her.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. For example, like I when I was younger, handwritten things worked for me all the time. And getting into like university and stuff, I tried the Google Calendar and the digital. And actually it worked for a little while, but the odd thing is that I had to have everything in more than one spot. I couldn't just have the Google Calendar. I had to have the written one. I had to have a written one like on a whiteboard. Like I had to see it all the time, connecting all the devices. And for a little while it worked because I like kind of how Google Calendar you can like check things off. And for me, I have to check the littlest things off every day to like kind of make myself feel like I got something done or whatever it is. And for some reason that stopped working. Everything that I had strategies for in terms of scheduling with that Google Calendar and having it in all these places, at some point it doesn't always stick. And I think that's the one thing that people won't really understand too with people who have ADHD. Like they think that they can stick to this one way, continuously be organized, and it always will be that way. But at some point, it's like the brain adapts to it and then it gets bored of it. So you have to swap. So then now I don't use the Google Calendar and I have to handwrite my to-do list, or I have to handwrite my calendar. And I relate to what you said in terms of colors too. I visualize so many things. I visualize numbers, I visualize dates, days, studying. I always have to have it like in the color code. And I think that's the weird thing with the digitals. You can't always have the color that you see for making sure that you get things done. And so memorizing, studying, keeping things on the list of what you're supposed to do, there has to be something in the mind that triggers it. And to me, I think it's also color for sure. So yeah, it's really interesting. It's not always the same. It's always changing. It's a little confusing, but I think for everyone it's different. So it's always that adapting, you know? Mm-hmm.
And I will say, I think one of the things for me, it's kind of the same, like with the checkmark things. Part of it was an ease of access. So if I'm doing a project, first of all, not all my projects are computer based, right? So if I'm doing projects that are not computer based, that don't have me sitting in front of a screen, I have to pull it up on my phone or something like that. And then I have to be able to do it. And to be honest, doing little fiddly things on my phone is really frustrating to me. Like just wildly frustrating. And so trying to add in a task that I just thought of pisses me off. And so I would rather just write it down. It's so much faster. I usually always have writing like around me. I have so many things to write stuff down with because that's going to be fastest to get it out of my brain. and then I can cross it off when I'm done. I can throw out that piece of paper. Like if it's a little task, I don't need this anymore. I don't need to have a record of it. I don't care. But if I have to like
So
open up
funny.
my Google Calendar and then like make a task and then write in the thing and then be like, okay, I think that's done. And then like, did I put it in the right spot? Did I put it in the right day? Did I put it in the right thing? Like it's gonna piss me off. So there you go.
That's go ahead, Robin. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think like I'm not super surprised about what you just said because it's almost like you're adding a task. Like adding tasks is a task in itself, right?
Yeah.
And I think what I hear from both of you is like two misconceptions is people forget it's a spectrum, right? ADHD is a spectrum, and just based on that, people will be on a different level of the spectrum, and so the overwhelming amount or what overwhelms the person will be different. So there's a lot of like tailoring to do to stay productive. And the second is part of ADHD is getting bored of things, right? And so like having to change. So to Veronika's point is, reassessing maybe like the productivity strategies and the planning strategies that you have after a certain time, because sticking to it just because, it used to work or because, somebody told you to sounds like it's counterproductive, right? So it's super interesting to hear this.
That's really interesting. And I'm curious, even from a client perspective and like a client management perspective, client work perspective, like that's a lot of different things to manage and juggle. You know what I mean? Because every client is going to receive something differently. Every client wants to review things differently, has a different process, has a different way. And then just even as a team, we all have different ways. One thing that I've always said, especially for this team as well, just knowing that people work so differently, because here's the thing, when you work for yourself for a reason. Most of the time it's because you don't like to, work for a corporate organization. You know what I mean? That's most of the time is why you end up working for yourself. You had a really bad experience and you're like, bye, see you later. Well, that was for me anyways. But anyways, the one of the things that I have always said was, I don't care when work gets done, as long as it gets done by the date that it needs to, because that's a way to allow people to work when they are most optimized for them. You know what I mean? Some people work best in the morning. Some people work best in the evening, and there's all kinds of things that people will say about that. But, it's never a consistent thing all the time. Like I think about even when I was starting up the agency or when I was doing my podcast or what have you, because I want to make sure that this is also actionable for podcasters and for agency owners that are listening right now. I would do my podcasting work in different pockets of time that made the most amount of sense. And it never was streamlined. It was never overly structured. It happened when there were pockets of time. You want to add anything to that, Emily? I think you wanted to add something as well.
So I was doing virtual assistant stuff, and then I did podcast management stuff, and then now I just do editing. And it really was because it was an evolution of some of it was like finding out what I didn't like to do, right? And with podcast management, I was like, as awful as this is like, I just want to be able to do my stuff and not have to sit there and like worry about doing like minor thing, report back. So for me, like now I'm like, great. Okay. Simona needs me to check off when this episode is done in Northflow. I can do that. And then I'm done. I don't have to do 8 million things in there. And I'm like, perfect. Love it. I can go back to my list. Cause like even outside of any project management system that we use, I have my list of episodes for the month so that I can see all together, just in a list, all the upcoming episodes for our clients when they go out and that kind of thing. And then I actually have a note on there what day Simona does stuff for them too. So I know, okay, if she needs them by a Wednesday or a Thursday, okay, if it's a Wednesday person, I need to do them before the Thursday person. Now it could be a week ahead. It could be a couple days ahead of Wednesday. It could be whatever, but I just know that I need to do them before the Thursday person. And for me, I can just look at all that and then I'm like, great. And now I can just notify her that they're done, mark it off however she needs me to mark it off. And then I can go about my way with my planning.
I definitely agree with that too. And in terms of like, even right now, working for this and doing the social media and everything and scheduling like when things can be done on a certain day, I think it's really wonderful, I think, to have that time and have a deadline. But like you said, have it done when just have it all done on that time. Doesn't matter how much you do on this day or the next day, as long as it's done on the deadline. I think that is also one thing that many people, maybe businesses or even like for academics and younger people, they struggle with that, and I have a younger brother too who's also diagnosed with ADHD, and like, I mean, anyone who's in the school and just anything that has a deadline, but they only want you doing it a certain time, certain day, a little bit every day. And sometimes not everyone can focus that much every day. I find that for me, that's kind of what would make me have more anxiety or have more struggles with trying to get things done on time. It's because you're stressing about that timeline, that deadline. And it's just nice. It's refreshing to have this as something different, It's really nice. It's really comfortable, I guess you could say. Less stress, and it's something that you're able to actually enjoy. I think having a little bit of ADHD, it makes you kind of not live in the moment sometimes when you're so overwhelmed of getting work done on like a certain day and all that.
I love that. And there's two things that I want to add to that. Then Robin, I'll bounce to you afterwards. The first thing you said the word enjoy. And I think what happens a lot of the time, especially in the podcasting world, and I know that you meant it like with the, within our team and like the work that we get to do and us being, together and the client work that we get to work on, which is amazing. And I would say for the most part, I enjoy like 99% of my day. There's always the one thing, you know what I mean, that you don't always enjoy, and it happens because nothing is ever going to be 100% perfect. And there's always going to be things that pop in, right? But having that said, when it comes to podcasting, I think that there's a lot of things that are expectations in the world of podcasting that put a lot of conditions and a lot of rules around how much fun you're supposed to be having with the medium, right? Because if you think about the purpose of a podcast is to share information and to get the information into the hands of the people who need it, right? So by that logic, if you're putting stress and all kinds of things on yourself to have to do 8 episodes in a row, to have a weekly post, or to have an intro and outro on your episodes, or have all of these different things that people will tell you, it can take a lot of the fun out of it, right? And it can make editing more challenging, and it can make it all more difficult. So I definitely wanted to touch on that, because there is the piece of, you're supposed to be enjoying the process. You're supposed to be enjoying having a show. Why put so much energy into something that you don't enjoy doing, right? And then the other thing, and this is something more specifically about our team, but also I think it's a lesson in other podcasters, other creators, other agency owners, always making sure that you are playing into your strengths, your team's strengths, the strengths of the people that are around you, because when you do that, then people are actually enjoying the work that they do, and it makes it easier to have that final result, right? So the two things that I wanted to add to that were, I love that you said, Veronika, enjoying what you do. And then also, in addition to that, making sure that you're always playing into your strengths as a team member, but also as a creator, right? Not everything is for everybody, and it's okay to know what that limit is. Does anyone else want to add anything to that? And after that, we'll go into some strategies for podcasters so that they can have some actionable takeaways from this episode.
I think that what you said, it covered it. Yeah. Playing into strengths, knowing your team's strengths, stuff like that. I think that that's all really important for, especially if you're working with other people. I know people will be like, well, if I'm by myself, then knowing your own strengths, having that self-identity of knowing what you're good at is really helpful, because it may lead to you saying, I need help with XYZ. And the help could just be a friend that you check in with and say hey, can you check in with me and see if I've recorded XYZ by this day? Can you check in and see, can you just ask me how this is going sometimes? It doesn't always mean that you need a huge team. It doesn't mean that you need a $1 million coach, something like that. It could just mean that you need that simple check-in to remind yourself of, oh, am I on the right track?
I think the only thing I would add from somebody who's working with, right? So the other side. So I find what's really, really helpful, which can be applied also, when you're a manager of a team, but the same way you can do it with clients or, any stakeholder you're working with closely, especially if you're aware that they have ADHD or some sort of neurodivergency, if that's a word, is to communicate from the get-go. I find really important when having this first chat to understand communication style, what actually helps. And then, of course, you tweak as you go, right? I mean, something isn't working, let's not keep on doing it, right? You can test things out. And I find that like just sets you for success. Because as you said, Simone, at the beginning, especially when you're working with like different clients, and then everybody's already different, right? In what they prefer communication wise, how they plan things, all of that, right? But then on top of it, again, you want to have that extra sensitivity towards somebody. Like if I know that a client gets really overwhelmed if there's too much on a page, let's say, right? And then I have to keep like something very, very simple, just 3 tasks a day, something like that, then I'll do that, right? Because it's otherwise like we're not gonna be able to collaborate. So I think just getting clear and deciding together what to test, and then having check-ins to see if what works and what doesn't. I think it's as important with client work as much as when you're managing a team and so on.
I was actually gonna say the exact same thing, but to add a little bit on top of it, I think it's also, yes, I think that helps also with creating goals. Maybe that's a strategy too for podcasters as well. Like when you're trying to create the goals of working really well and connecting with the clients, I think from the start you have to tell them what your vision is, what your goals and what the things you value as a podcaster, and then show them your interest in what theirs are. And then together you work together. If you understand that they have maybe a neurological disorder or like ADHD, then just like what Robin said, you're able to work together and help each other, check in, and perhaps it helps both of you, not just one or the other, but both of you together. So I think that's awesome. Yeah.
These are all such good tips. I love having all the different perspectives and all of the different sides. And I guess mine to add in would be that you don't have to do what everyone else says that you have to do. You don't have to have a weekly podcast if you don't want to. You don't have to have sponsors on your show if you don't want to. You don't have to do anything if you don't want to. You get to create the show that you want to create. And so maybe just a reminder for creators, for podcasters, that you actually get to do it in your way. You actually get to set the schedule in your way and do it how you want to. And pulling off of what you were just sharing, Veronika and Robin and Emily as well, like thinking about what is the purpose of your show? Why do you have it? Why does it exist? Why did you create it? What is the mission behind the show? Because I always find when you are anchored back into the mission of the show, it makes it easier for you to come back, or, to come back to recording episodes or going back to, producing episodes, because there's a bit more intention behind it. And I would say, don't give up if you are, you've missed a week. It's okay to just pick back up and continue on again, because really nobody is like sitting here being like, oh my God, I can't believe Emily didn't post that podcast episode today. She said it's every other Tuesday she's supposed to post. It's like, okay, if it comes out on Wednesday, it's really not the end of the world. Especially as like a solo creator. I think that there are different ways to, if being consistent and being, publishing an episode every Tuesday is really important for you, then you got to figure out how the best strategy is for you to get the things done off of your list without the additional overwhelm. Because a lot of the stuff that we create in our minds adds a lot of additional chaos and a lot of additional, just a lot of additional chaos that we don't necessarily need to have all the time. So kind of what you were sharing before, Emily, like pulling back your list, getting the things done that you need to just get done. Do those simple tasks, the things that you can do and that you can, execute, and then go on to the next thing that you need to do that feels overwhelming. Like, pulling also Veronika, what is that? Like if you have, well, you can break it down, I know we have a client within the agency who does her own editing, she's in the membership, and she'll be like, oh, I didn't post my podcast again this week. It's okay though, what do we need to do? How do we need to get you restarted again? Because honestly, and especially as someone who's fallen off my own podcast before many times, it can be challenging to pick it back up again. So it's like, what is that one thing that you need to do just to pick it back up again? And it doesn't have to be anything chaotic, but I would say like removing all of the shoulds, because honestly, people will tell you need to do all kinds of things and it doesn't actually move the needle at all in your life, your business, or your show. That's my thought. I'll land my plane there. Anyone want to add to that?
I think that what you said was important about what's one thing you can do. And sometimes it is, what is the one thing you can do to stop the doom spiral? Because a lot of people can get that doom spiral of, I didn't do this. I'm trash. Why can't I stick to this? We're done. We're done with that. It's 2025. You're okay. It's okay. If you didn't put out the podcast on that day, it's okay. No worries. But it is one of those things that, like, even figuring out just like what can stop that. And is it, oh, I'm going to post a story really quickly that says, hey, post, episodes coming out tomorrow. Okay, great. Now everybody knows. Now it's not a big deal. They know when it's coming out. Okay, great. Or like, what is that small thing that you can do? Because I think that that's where people get caught up. They think that they've lost too much traction and like, how are they supposed to make it up? And I think that that's what we need to like mitigate, especially because people who are neurodivergent can be especially sensitive to criticism. And that can, I feel like, even be criticism of themselves. Like, you're especially hard on yourself. Even a small minor setback is amplified in your head. And so like recognizing that and recognizing when it is an amplified problem versus when it is a capital P problem.
I have to add to this also because Emily, and like, tell me if I need to not say this, but I'm going to say this. But so when, like, because you do all of the editing for the agency, like you manage all of our editing for the entire agency. So if you're listening to this and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't do it. I have, it's overwhelming, and it's like, you can find strategies, you can find ways, because Emily does it every single day, and so, but it's so funny though, because if I'm like, oh,
Somehow.
Emily, somehow, because if I'm like, Emily, I have, where's the timeline for X episode, for example, and you're like, oh my God, I'm the worst. I'm the worst. And I'm like, huh? I'm like, no, you're not. I'm like, you're not the worst.
All caps messages, I am trash.
Literally. And I'm like, what?
Simona gets us all the time. She gets me being like, I'm sorry. I'll do better. I want to make you proud of me.
And I'm like,
trash.
you're doing great.
I'm sorry.
And I feel like the mom in like Mean Girls. I'm like, you're doing great, sweetie.
You're doing great.
Oh my God. Anyways,
Yes, I knew what you said. Tell me if this is too much. I'm like, I know what she's gonna say. And that's totally fine because it's true.
Oh my gosh, it's so funny that
it's true.
It is. It 100% is. And I think too, we were talking about like lists and stuff like that. And like, I've never been diagnosed with ADHD. If I were to be like, I feel like it would probably show up as like a slight, like possible, like a little bit, you know what I mean? Because it's definitely the way my brain works. There's some things going on in there on the thing. So we use ClickUp for like our task management in the agency. And sometimes I look at it and I'm like, what am I looking at right now? For me, on a call with a client, doing something, my system that I've developed, anything that I follow up with, I put a big F beside it and I circle it. And then at the end of the day, I go through everything and I put like an F, because like F follow up, and then I put a check mark through it once it's done. It's the same. It works really well. And talking about earlier, all those little things into your mind, you're like, oh my gosh, I got to do the 5 small things. And then it's like, okay, actually, you just write them down really quick. You put an F beside it and then you call it a day. So anyways, any final thoughts before we wrap this episode?
When you were talking about strategies for podcasters, real quick, I think that one, you were talking about, weekly, you don't have to do weekly stuff like that. I think just like really, I think not enough people consider doing seasons. I think so many people are focused on doing a certain publishing schedule that they don't think about doing seasons. And I think the benefit of seasons sometimes for people is that they can decide, I want to talk about this topic. And then it gives them a really clear idea for like 8 to 10 to 12, however many episodes. This is what I'm talking about. This is all going to go back to this one. And after that, I can go on to something else. New creative juices, new creative idea. Great. But for those ones, they have a clear path of what they're talking about. Because I think sometimes for just like every single week is something different, it can get a little overwhelming. And then also, like, if people are looking for a certain help with things, like if your podcast in particular is helping people find solutions to problems that they have for like health and wellness, or even like just day-to-day life, whatever, if you have a series about that, then they can listen to that series, and you might have more engagement in that series, because you might have people who just listen to that and they may not pick up on everything else. And that's okay, because not everyone's going to appeal to everybody. But you may have helped someone significantly for 12 episodes because you talked about the thing that they needed to hear.
I love that.
And I think that's a value that we kind of dismiss, because you're looking for those reoccurring people. And of course, we want reoccurring listeners. That's what we want, of course. But there is also value in people who can listen to you, like that you're helping with an item that you may not talk about all the time. And they can be a really good thing for people who need that mental break too. Because you can do a season and then you can either decide your seasons are continuous and they're back to back and you don't have a break in between them. Or you can say, and then I need a month off where I don't have to think about this. Awesome. Great. Give yourself that time. Like, it coincides when you're going to go out of the country. Great. Don't think about your podcast when you're romping around on some exotic vacation. I don't think that's like an unheard of thing to say, but there's so many people who do put pressure on themselves that they can't walk away from it because they're like, well, I got to think about this thing. I got to do this. Give yourself a break.
I really, really like that. And I think this may be like something very basic I'm about to say, but I think you inspired me this tip. Maybe talk to somebody, brainstorm with somebody if you feel stuck. I think sometimes also the overwhelming side of things comes from dealing with your own thoughts. We are all very good at overthinking things, and sometimes just like pushing it out there, like just, putting those words out in the world and with somebody else, for example, like you just said, right? I'm sure that there's people who's like, oh my God, I never thought of that, right? And a lot of the times they can come from like a conversation, putting yourself in the room with other, other podcasters, other people who are in the same kind of industry. And that could help removing the overwhelm, or even sometimes removing the negative thoughts that we create, right? So a lot of, help can come from a simple conversation sometimes.
Beautiful. Veronika, any final thoughts?
No, I definitely agree with all of that. I think the one thing that I can definitely say from experience is conversations help, talking helps, writing helps, anything that can help you get whatever's bothering you out, outside, because you're not alone and no one's alone. And so no one should feel like they have to deal and feel like they have to have it all under control only on themselves. So talking to other people, that can definitely help. And I do like that whole idea of having the seasons, because you can focus on that one topic for a certain amount of time. You can be so passionate about it, come up with creative new ideas for it. And then once you feel like you've gotten all that you have out, all that you want to talk about, it's so nice to start something new and have a refreshing topic and have a new season. And you're right. It's just one of the things that I always love to do is just help people. And I think if, some people, maybe that mindset of just doing what they can to help others can even help themselves feel even more better and then more at ease as well. So, yeah.
That's beautiful.
I agree.
That's so beautiful. I love that. What a beautiful way to round out our episode today. Thank you so much for joining today's roundtable. And I'm so grateful for each of you. And I'm also so grateful to you who are listening today or watching on YouTube. Thank you so much for being here. And we will see you on the next episode.